Hello and welcome to my channel. Today I'm going to be using this photograph of my dad walking with our Great Dane down his street. This is a special photograph as this dog had recently passed away, and so this is a piece we are going to use to remember her and her journey ahead from beyond. So to begin, I will set up my space. I put down some painter's tape. I'm playing some awesome, nice, lighthearted music. I have my palette out, my paint brushes, and I'm just going to sketch out some main objects within the piece. Obviously, a really light outline of my dad and the dog, and then I am going to do just some of the main branches of the trees and kind of go back into 1-point perspective to use that road. I outlined lightly the sides as well, where there's going to be some fall leaves and some foliage. So with working with this reference picture, because there is so much detail, I like to kind of blur my eyes, and we're going to work from the back of the image forward. So I'm starting with my sky behind those trees and behind those details. I'm using a wash technique, which is when you put the water down on your paper first and then you begin adding in the color slowly. Because there are white clouds within my sky, I'm going to move that paint around those areas and leave the clouds just plain white. I can also lighten a little bit of that blue to give the cloud some dimension, but mostly I'm moving that blue around in the spaces between the clouds and leaving the clouds there. Once I'm happy with the clouds, I'm going to start to add those kind of darker grays that I see in the sky behind those trees, and then I start with an underpainting and a wash for the foliage. So I'm going to use some red, some oranges, some yellows. It's okay too, depending on your painting style, if you want to make this a little bit more vibrant, but naturally just kind of grabbing what colors I see from underneath and blurring my eyes when I look at those images to kind of begin to blend those and leave that impression of shadow within my foliage. When I'm doing my road, because it is a dirt road, I'm going to use a couple different texture techniques because I'm doing the gray wash down first. That will allow me to have some space to then do a salt resist. I'm just using regular old salt and sprinkling it right over the top. And what that'll do is begin to collect the color, and it leaves that really neat texture. I use that up close so that the detail of the road that is up closer to the viewer has more of a texture than what falls behind. Here I'm just adding those underpaintings to the figures in the piece because they are very small. I recommend not doing a wash technique and just kind of grabbing a little bit of color because you're going to need more control. So small brush and more dry color. When creating shadow and dimension to your work, you're going to want to use a very small brush and less water with your color as well. However, you do want the color to be translucent. You just layer the shadows slowly. Think about watercolor as something that you actually can't make lighter very easily, but you can always make it darker. So it's okay to start light and to go back and add more. Now that my figures have a lot of dimension and I added the shadow, I'm going to start to add the shadows of the trees as well, thinning them as they go into the distance so that that also creates that perspective. I also am kind of breaking up the shadows of the trees so that I still keep that texture that I have in the road. You can start to see now that texture that's beginning to build up front when using that salt to kind of create those almost like the pebbles in the road. Now I'm slowly darkening the shadows to give a little more contrast and deepen that dimension to the work. I darken the shadows closest to the objects that are casting the shadow, and that will give it the more realistic appearance. When shadows stretch, they get lighter as they get further from the object. And now I'm going to be adding that dark detail of the trees. Notice that I have been layering a lot of grays and browns in order to create that layered effect of the deep woods. Don't go crazy trying to get in all of the detail. A lot of it is already implied. So when you begin to kind of layer in those deep shadows, the thicker the shadow toward the bottom, that kind of implies those are the trunks of the trees and they're lightening as they get closer to the sky. You can darken some of the tree trunks, but I wouldn't try and go over every single trunk that you are seeing in the photograph. When working on the branches, I'm using my smallest brush and I'm pressing and lifting as the branches get closer to the sky. This creates that more thinning look, and so you can get those really nice thin lines. Notice I did not go over every trunk and every branch. And then in order to imply that leaf texture, I just created almost like little dots. And this shows that there are some leaves kind of holding on to some of the bushes and branches and gives the woods that more realistic look as well. If you look really closely, I did actually add a tiny bit of pen to the bottom of the dog's paws and the bottom of the boots of the man walking. This was just because I really needed to control and darken those areas. Okay, now removing the tape, which is always a great part of our watercolor painting process. I like to leave a lot of room when I'm doing commission pieces so that people are able to cut and mount their piece to the size that they would like. So this is a 5x7 painting on an 8x8 square of paper, and then I sign and complete the work. Thank you for watching. Please subscribe for more.